What's up, guys? Welcome to the Cashcraft, your daily dose of finance and technology news and updates. Miami's richest residents are now paying $1,000 per minute just to avoid sitting in traffic. That's not a typo. $1,000 per minute. And the waiting list to do it is months long. This isn't about convenience anymore. It's about what happens when a city's infrastructure can't keep up with the wealth pouring into it. And what's replacing traditional commutes tells you everything about where Miami is headed. Here's the reality on the ground. Miami traffic has become so suffocating that billionaires and ultra-high net worth buyers are fundamentally changing how they move through the city. We're not talking about buying a nicer car or hiring a driver. We're talking about bypassing roads entirely. Real estate agent Angel Nicholas works exclusively with clients spending 8 figures on South Florida homes. Recently, one of his buyers had a problem. They'd just closed on a waterfront mansion, but owned a second property across the city. The drive between them could take an hour in Miami traffic, sometimes more. For someone operating at that level, an hour in gridlock isn't just annoying, it's a business liability. The solution wasn't a faster car, it was a helicopter. But here's where it gets interesting. Miami's wealthy aren't just chartering helicopters. They're installing private floating helipads directly at their waterfront estates. These aren't fixed structures, they're floating platforms that can be positioned right at your dock. You walk from your back door, step onto your private helipad, and you're airborne in minutes. The cost is staggering. A typical helicopter charter in Miami runs about $3,000 for a short hop across the city. That's roughly 3 minutes of flight time. Do the math, $1,000 per minute. For context, that's more than most Americans earn in a week, spent in the time it takes to brew coffee. But demand is surging anyway. Angel Nicholas says the floating helipads have become the newest status symbol among his clientele. It's not enough to own waterfront property anymore. The question now is, can you land a helicopter there? Builders and real estate agents are scrambling to meet requests. Installation companies that specialize in these floating platforms report waiting lists stretching months out. What's driving this isn't just wealth, it's Miami's infrastructure crisis colliding with its population boom. Since 2020, the city has absorbed an unprecedented influx of finance professionals, tech founders, and crypto millionaires fleeing higher tax states. The roads were never designed for this volume. Traffic that was manageable 5 years ago is now a daily nightmare. And unlike New York or San Francisco, Miami has no extensive subway system, no commuter rail network. You either drive or you find another way. For the ultra-wealthy, helicopters became that other way. But here's what most people don't realize. This isn't just about avoiding traffic. It's about time arbitrage at the highest level. When your hourly economic output is measured in tens of thousands of dollars, spending $3,000 to save 45 minutes isn't extravagant. It's rational. You're buying back time that's worth more than the flight costs. The floating helipads solve another problem too. Miami's zoning and permitting process for permanent helipad construction is notoriously complex. Fixed helipads require extensive approvals, environmental reviews, and neighborhood consent. Floating platforms exist in a regulatory gray zone. They're technically marine equipment, not permanent structures. You can install one in weeks, not years. Now here's the reframe. Most coverage of this misses. This isn't a story about rich people being frivolous. It's a story about what happens when a city's growth outpaces its infrastructure investment by such a massive margin that private citizens start building their own parallel transportation network. Miami didn't plan for this level of wealth concentration. It didn't expand its roads, didn't build mass transit, didn't create helicopter corridors. The market filled the vacuum, and that creates a 2-tier city. One tier sits in traffic, the other flies over it. The gap between those tiers is widening every month. When the baseline cost to bypass the system is $1,000 per minute, you're not just seeing wealth inequality, you're seeing mobility inequality. Access to time itself becomes stratified by net worth. The bigger question is what this signals about Miami's trajectory. Cities that can't provide functional infrastructure for their population eventually hit a breaking point. Either the government invests billions in roads, rail, and public transit, or the wealthy increasingly opt out of shared systems entirely. Helicopters today. What's next? Private VTOL aircraft when those get FAA approval? Autonomous air taxis reserved for premium subscribers? The question you should be asking yourself is whether this is sustainable. Can a city function long-term when its highest earners have completely decoupled from its transportation grid? Or does this kind of parallel infrastructure eventually create a feedback loop where public systems get even less investment because the people with political influence don't use them anymore? Personally, I'm watching Miami's infrastructure bond measures closely. If the city doesn't make massive transit investments in the next few years, this helicopter trend isn't an anomaly. It's the beginning of a permanent split in how different economic classes experience urban life. That's all for today, folks. If you found this helpful, make sure to like and subscribe to The Cash Craft for more finance and tech news. Drop a comment below with your thoughts, and I will see you in the next one.